Hey guys, it's your boy Wolian here, and today we need to talk. So, I'm pretty sure quite a few of you guys have watched anime before, and you have some of your favorite animes, you have your favorite characters from those anime, and I'm pretty sure quite a few of them are villains, right? And that's what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about villains, anime villains to be exact. And the question I want to ask you guys is, are anime villains nowadays really villains? So, first, we do need to find out what exactly is a villain. And basically, a villain is defined as an evil or wicked character who enacts evil or really just harms others. And typically, they tend to be selfish, cruel, very malicious, all of that good old bad stuff, you know? And I want to say that nowadays, villains aren't really like that in anime. You tend to like them a lot, and typically, villains are not supposed to be likable. They are the antagonist to the protagonist of any fictional work, and usually they are meant to be despised so that you feel no kind of sympathy or empathy or connection towards those villains once you see them lose. Now, usually, what we do find these days is that a lot of authors tend to try and make these villains likable when they shouldn't really be doing that. They shouldn't really be making them, relatable. You shouldn't really be thinking about what they're saying as something profound. Instead, you should be thinking, well, this nigga crazy, this nigga, I hate him. I hate him. That's what you're supposed to be thinking. Unfortunately, that's not what really happens nowadays in animes, in most anime, I should say. Now, as I mentioned, villains should not really be likable. And examples of villains that are well liked would be, basically, characters like Pain from Naruto or Katakuri from One Piece, even Aizen from Bleach. They aren't supposed to be likable. However, they are. So, this is something that I would like to talk about with you guys. So let's jump into it. So, what makes a good villain? Now, as I mentioned before, a villain is supposed to be selfish. They're supposed to be cruel. They're supposed to want to chase down power. They're supposed to basically just be all for themselves and use any and all means necessary to achieve their goals, no matter how vile it is. And we tend to find that a lot of villains, or quote unquote villains in anime nowadays, are not exactly villains in the truest extent. And again, a good example of this would be Pain. Pain isn't actually a villain. Once you find out his ideals, you will know that Pain really just wants to rid the world of war. He wants peace. And the way that he does it is a bit, well, messed up, to say the least. And the thing is, you might think, well, he's gonna end up starting a war in order to end war. So, he's a villain. Well, not really. He's not really a villain in that sense. He's more of an anti hero because ultimately, what he's doing is selfless. It's for the betterment of all people, no matter how messed up the method he's using actually is. But at the end of the day, it's for others. So he isn't really a villain in that sense. He's much more of an anti hero. Now, another example of someone who you would think is a villain or is portrayed as a villain but isn't really a villain is also Katakuri. So, Katakuri from One Piece is the son of the Emperor of the Sea, Big Mom, and you see him facing off against Luffy, that's the main character of One Piece, and they're fighting. And what you tend to see is that Katakuri, most of the time, is viewed as someone who is, quite strong. He's quite vicious. He does anything for, his family, who would be Big Mom. So, at her orders, he'd basically do anything, and that's how he's made to seem. However, once we get his backstory, we find out that he's actually always been made fun of as a kid due to his appearance, because of the fact that his mouth is actually quite, how do you say, it's quite bigger than most people, and so in addition to that, he also has stitches along his face, and this is due to the fact, or we think it's due to the fact, that he likes to eat a lot. So once he's eating, he ends up extending the size of his jaw, or I guess how far his jaw opens up. So that caused quite a bit of an issue for him as a kid, and really what he decided to do in response to that is really to just become ruthless, and also to cover up his mouth mostly. So he fights off against Luffy, and at the end of it all, he respects Luffy, and we kind of see them share not really a bit of friendship, but more of mutual respect and understanding, and so they kind of leave each other alone. Now, those, as I mentioned before, aren't really what we'd consider as villains. They're just misunderstood people, and typically they end up being anti-heroes. Now, a good villain would be someone like Frieza. See, Frieza is from the Dragon Ball Z franchise and from the Dragon Ball Z universe, and he is basically the textbook definition of a villain. He is selfish, he is cruel, he is greedy, and he would do anything for power, right? So, a good example of this man wiped out an entire planet of people, just because he thought that one day in the future, one of them might be able to beat him and stop his reign of terror. Now, this might not seem too bad to a lot of you. However, you must keep in mind that this guy is this very same guy who also enslaved said people who he's trying to, or that he has already wiped out, and also at that point in time he had already enslaved most of the universe, or to be more specific, he conquered most of the universe that they're currently in. And so what you do find is Frieza is quite literally what a villain should be, and he shouldn't be likable, which Frieza isn't. However, what you can like, or what you are permitted to like, is the fact that he is a villain. He's a good villain, right? That means he does his job as a villain quite well. He gets on your nerves. He really makes you feel the hate. And that's what you want from a villain. That's what you need from a villain. You need a villain to be able to invoke such strong emotions from people, stuff like hatred, stuff like rage. And that's something that Frieza does quite well, because of the fact that he's such a piece of shit. So that's really what you should be aspiring to make. If you're an author, you should be aspiring to make villains like that. And also another example, also from the Dragon Ball Z franchise, would be Kid Buu. That nigga is just, yeah, he's Kid Buu. That's really all that I can say. Kid Buu is someone who just does whatever he wants whenever he wants to, whether it's good or bad, and usually it's bad. And you know how they say some people just want to see the world burn? Kid Buu is that, and he actually did make the world burn and blow up. But that's not the point. The point is, he's really, really a good villain because of the fact that he's selfish. He doesn't care anything about anyone else but himself, and he does whatever he pleases with the thought in mind that power is what is right. Power is what makes things right. That is what a villain should be. A few other examples of villains from other anime would be Aizen from Bleach. Bleach is my favorite anime, and Aizen tends to be one of the most favorable villains, basically in anime, really. And does he deserve that spot? Yes, because of the fact that we haven't received any backstory for Aizen, and what Aizen intends to do is basically to become the god of the Bleach universe. And this is something that we find out during the arc for the Arrancar arc. We find out that Aizen really doesn't care about anyone else but himself, and he always has plans for getting to that next stage, for attaining power. That's what Aizen is as a villain, and that's what a villain should be. They should always be selfish and trying to achieve something of their own, on their own merit. They should also be trying to just basically do whatever they want, and also typically that ends up meaning that they hurt people in the process, innocent people usually. So Aizen is another example of what a good villain should be. Now, if you would want to know about villains from Naruto, if I had to think about it, I would say that the most villainous character in Naruto would probably be Orochimaru, but even then, he's not exactly the villain. Even Madara. Madara is one of the best anime characters that is known for most of the anime fans today. And what you would tend to find out is that his aspirations for his villainy, or his reasoning for his villainy, is really more so selfless than it is selfish. And what he wants to do is essentially the same thing as Pain, which is to basically just stop wars and basically put people in a dream world where everything goes the way that they want individually. So that's why he hatched the plan of the Infinite Tsukuyomi. You could say that Black Zetsu had a part in that, but we're not really talking about him. I really don't see him as much to the story of Naruto, but it is what it is. However, like I was mentioning before, that makes Madara not exactly a villain, but more so a anti-hero. Now, Another example of what a villain should be like is, from the one of the most well-known animes of this time, and that would be My Hero Academia, and the villain would be, you guessed it, All For One. He really is what a villain should be like, and one of the most notable villains in modern day anime, because what he wants is really just to watch the world burn. Yeah, that's it. He just wants to cause chaos. He wants bad people to win, to rule. He wants to rule over the world and take everything for himself. And it does not matter how he gets there as long as he does get there. And that is what you want from a villain. So, as far as villains go, I really do like those characters that I mentioned before, Frieza, Kid Buu, and also All For One, Aizen, because they represent what a villain should truly be like. They are the very definition of what a villain is. Now, does that mean that villains nowadays, or, well, antagonists nowadays, aren't really villains, and does that mean that the anime is no longer good because of the fact that they're no longer true villains? No, it doesn't, because there are a lot of anime that are just as good and sometimes even better without the fact that, the villains that are in there aren't actually villains but are more like anti-heroes. So, an anime that benefits from this greatly is, hate to go back to it a lot, but Naruto. So you tend to find out that the anti-heroes of Naruto, which is Madara and Pain, those guys are one of the most likable set of characters, or some of the most set of likable characters that you will ever see in any anime, period. And you'd also be able to see that other characters from other animes, such as, Katakuri and Yuha from Bleach, is also quite likable because of the fact that the aspirations that they do have is due to the fact that they intend to make the world a better place, just in a messed up way to get to that place. But, they are anti-heroes, and it doesn't make the anime any worse. It actually makes it quite good because, you get a bit of a different pace as opposed to, just seeing a bunch of niggas that you hate. And that's really a good thing. But, it would be quite good as well if more anime started to bring back real villains, so that way you can truly see, you could really get the emotions that a villain is supposed to invoke, which is, the hate, the rage, basically the understanding that this is someone that you will never and should never like and relate to. But that's really all that I wanted to speak with you guys about today. You can leave a comment below and let me know what you guys think, and give me some examples of some of the people who you would consider as villains, because there are quite a lot more. Like that guy from Full Metal Alchemist who turned his daughter into a chimera. Yeah, that nigga is that's a villain and a half right there. And even Hyakimaru's father from Dororo. Now, his crime as a villain is this nigga made a deal with 12 demons to have them eat his unborn, or currently being born, son, in exchange for him to gain power and to rule over the land which he currently resides in. Yeah, yeah, that's a villain and a half, and a whole lot more than that. But you know, that would be a discussion for another time. So you guys can actually let me know what you do think of the villains that I mentioned earlier, and like I said before, you guys can comment and let me know about other people that you think are true villains in other anime that you've seen as well. But this has been your boy Wolian, and I will see you guys next time.